Hey, it's Rick. Welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be making a base for this old Robbie the Robot model I've got. I've had this thing a long time. Not really sure where I got it from actually, so it's probably, I don't know, 20 years old. I found this photo online of a kit that somebody makes with a new base for this particular model. But I really want it to look like the old vintage Star Trek TV series rocks that they used to make with brown paper. The first step is to scan the feet of the model so that I can model the foot shapes that are going to be cut out of the actual stone base. So once I pull the scan pictured into Modo, I'm just sculpting 3D objects over top of it using it as a template. Now this is the actual terrain I sculpted in ZBrush. I put some rocks and stuff sticking out of it. I think I'm going to paint those in a different color when I get around to it. Now here are the feet that I brought in. I'm going to bring them down. I sort of created an area there where I think the feet are going to go. So I bring them down and I make them a Boolean operation so they become a negative and they cut that foot shape. So when the robot goes in, he's going to sit right in that pocket. Here's the final printed part. I just made it out of black PLA. You can see the footwells in it where the robot's actually going to stand. Now I've got to prime it, and then we're going to paint it. I just used a rattle can of automotive etch primer for this. Now what I'm going to do here is coat the whole thing with an acrylic medium and then put sand on it to give it sort of a texture, help hide some of the layer lines so that I don't have to do any Bondo work. So I'm painting the entire thing with this acrylic, but I'm not painting the rocks and stuff. I'm just painting it where I want the sand to actually stick. I think you can use wood glue for this or regular white glue as well. It's pretty much the same thing. Whatever's good and sticky, and once it dries, I'm going to give it a top coat of more acrylic to make sure that the sand doesn't fall off. It's best to do this in stages, a little bit at a time. That way the previous layer of acrylic doesn't dry before you get the sand on, because that really wouldn't do anything for you. It doesn't matter what color sand you use for this because you're going to paint over the whole thing when it's done anyway. You don't actually have to go out and buy sand for this project if you don't want to. You could just dig up something from the backyard, sand for the beach, whatever you can find. Now that the sand part's done and everything is dry, I'm sealing it all in with another coat of acrylic. Before I got to this stage, I brushed off all the sand that was on it that wasn't going to stick anyway. Just to make sure that none of that sand got stuck in places I didn't want it to go, like where the feet are going to sit for the robot. I find that when I've got certain airbrush colors I use a lot of, I prefer to mix them in a large bottle, like a Gatorade bottle or something similar, to the right consistency. So all you need to do is pour them into the airbrush, and then whatever you don't use, you can pour back in the bottle and use it later. And Gatorade bottles are pretty cheap too. You can get them at the dollar store for $1. Here I'm just giving the entire thing a black base coat. Now, if you're impatient like I am, you can use a small desktop fan to dry things quickly between coats. It really speeds up the whole process. Here I start dry brushing over the entire thing with just plain gray acrylic paint. Now I'm going to go in with the airbrush and just apply some more gray to sort of lighten things up in different spots and give it sort of a patchy, you know, vintage fake fabric kind of rock sort of look. Now I'm going to use some weathering powders to add a little bit of color and a little bit of dusty appearance to the whole thing. These things work pretty good at giving you a dusty appearance that's pretty random, especially if you kind of just drop it in place or shake the brush over top of stuff. It just falls in a very random pattern and makes things look like dust and dirt has accumulated on the surface. I try a few different colors here. I like the gray and I like the beige. Wasn't so fond of the brown, so I stopped using that. Once I'm done applying the weathering powders, I use the airbrush without paint in it to just blow the excess dust off. I've decided I want to paint the individual rocks in black, like they're sticking out, they're like a different kind of rock. I think I'm also going to make them glossy when I'm done. I'm dry brushing some gray acrylic over top of the black rocks here, just to pick up the textural details that I made in the model. Then I apply some weathering powder to blend in the edges where the rocks actually meet the sand or the dirt. I go back in here with some really thin black paint in the airbrush to just pick up the shadows, the crevices, the underside of everything, to give it some more of that sort of, like I said, fabric kind of look like they used to make caves and rock stuff out of for old vintage sci-fi TV shows. Now I'm layering more weathering powder over top of the whole thing, just to make the top appear more dusty, as if like a lighter shade of dust has settled on the surface of everything. There's no right or wrong answer for any of this. I'm sort of making it up as I go, so I can do whatever I like. Now it's time to apply the clear acrylic gloss over just the rocks to make those shiny. The bottom of this model is not only shiny plastic, but it's also slightly uneven. So what I'm using here is a hot glue gun to glue them in rather than crazy glue or something similar. I just don't think it would fill the gaps or give it a very good seal. And that's it. He's done. At least for now. I might in the future put lights in the robot or something, but I'm not sure. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit like and subscribe, and check back for more content.